right, welcome to the Security Cocktail Hour. I'm Joe Patty.
I'm Adam Roth.
Adam, how are you doing on this fine day?
I'm incredible. It's actually very nice and hot out.
No, it isn't. It's like some major storm here. We're like getting in the
They call
Northeast.
it the
It's
bomb cyclone, right?
the bomb cyclone. Yeah, well, hopefully the bomb cyclone won't like take out our internet while we're recording this, because we have a guest today. We have someone coming on. John Dwyer. John, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here. I don't know what kind of weather you guys have, but it's cold and rainy here in Pittsburgh, which is shockingly on brand for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I haven't been there for a while. I went to grad school in Pittsburgh, and I got to be honest, I haven't been there in 30 years. I've just had no reason to go
Where did
back.
you where did
I,
you go to school? Wait, did we talk about this before?
I think we did. I went to a Pitt. I
Oh,
went
okay,
to
yeah, we
yeah, I
talked
went to
about
grad
Oakland.
school there, and it's funny because the few people I would still talk to from there, I think are all pretty much moved out. But I hear it's a tech hub now, and there's like a lot
Yeah,
coming back. You know.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, like I went to Carnegie Mellon, so I was, running around those
Oh,
dirty streets of Oakland as well.
well, aren't you special? You went to Carnegie Mellon, not like
Yeah,
us,
I
a
think I was like
second
a
tier peasants who went to Pitt. So,
It
okay.
was like an administrative error or something where they accepted my application.
Well, I used to bike through their campus. It was really nice, I gotta say, but never got in the door.
Mm.
But
I was in Pittsburgh once. Let me tell you how long ago I was there. I slept in Three River Stadium Park.
Yeah, so that got torn down a long time ago, right? I moved
Yeah.
here in 2018, but yeah, Pittsburgh's not bad. It's really starting to grow on me, you know? There's no traffic. I think that's like my favorite thing about living in Pittsburgh is that rush hour is from 5 to 6 and then it's over. It's not like being in the Northeast where rush hour starts at 2 and ends at 8 o'clock at night.
yeah, well, that's it. I lived in Oakland, and like one time I had to go downtown for something, and I'm like, "How do you get downtown?" And people like drive, and I'm like, "Well, where do you park?" And they're just like, "Well, just park." You
You just
know, I'm
there's
thinking it's
street
like
parking.
Manhattan or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
street parking. I'm
No,
like,
so
this
you
is
just
crazy. You
Yeah, it's
know.
completely different. But I actually kind of like that. Maybe that's a sign that I'm getting older, is that it's quiet and I don't need all the hustle and bustle.
Oh, that's cool. So, besides enjoying Pittsburgh, tell us a little bit about what you do. It's very cool. It's like this is
Yeah,
one of
so
the cool things.
yeah, well, I try to it is pretty cool. I'm very, very fortunate. So I work for an organization of IBM security called X-Force.
Yeah,
And
which is
we
well known in the security field. For
I would
everyone who
like
doesn't
to,
know
yes, I would like to think so, if that means I'm doing a good job, people hearing about it. But
it.
so we are on the consulting arm of IBM Security, and so we operate in three main pillars, which is offensive security, threat intelligence, and incident response. And basically, we have a client base that we try to prepare for and prevent, and then respond to incidents around the globe. And then my particular job is I head up research and development. So a lot of my work is focused on, okay, so we have all of these consulting operations going out. What can we learn from, like, what are we commonly seeing from a gaps point of view across our client base? What is a common attack path from the adversaries? So what can we learn about the threat landscape by looking at the behaviors of the attackers? And then can we build some tools to make our consultants more efficient and effective?
Yeah, that's very cool because I know it's not only, fun for you and your people. I know especially people who are into it, but I know that when you're a customer, I've talked about it before where it's like, when you're responsible for, protecting one organization or you're in one organization, you get into it and do all this stuff, but you have a narrow view. But you
Hmm.
guys see a lot broader stuff, and like when you're like in just the one organization, you get hit with something. Sometimes it's hard to tell if it's targeted, if just you're getting this or if it's really widespread.
Yeah, I would say it's going to be really hard for me to get out of this kind of work where you are, if you think about it, like consulting firms for security are in a very unique point of view, right? Especially with incident response. Like if you get to work with incident response or offensive security, is you get to routinely see the attacker be successful. So there's no question about what they were or trying to do. in other areas of security, there's a vested interest in stopping them from completing their goals and objectives. And so everything that would happen after you would stop them would be speculative. When you get to work with incident response, is that you come in at the end and then you build that story backwards. And so you can say, regardless of the geolocation or the company like business vertical that they're in, this is what attackers are generally interested in. And it keeps you having that one foot, or at least like one finger on the pulse of like reality in terms of the threat landscape is so interesting to me. I don't know if I could ever get out of this game. Like I don't ever want to be so far away from it that I can't look at real world data anymore.
Well, we know a lot of people, Joe and I, in incident response and in threat intelligence, but incident response requires a very dedicated individual who's constantly going to travel. Some people have the tolerance of dealing with that traveling. Some have families and they really want to be with their families. And some families understand that the individuals that are traveling are it's part of their life, their culture.
Mhm.
So a family has to really be invested in the individual if they're traveling that often.
Yeah, for some people, the best thing for their family is for them to be out of the house from Monday
That
Right.
through
sounds like my
Friday. You know,
My
yeah,
wife.
my
I've
wife's
heard of those
ideas.
cases too. You know.
But to your point though, Adam, to your point is like I came up through incident response, and so I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for responders out there. And it's just we did this study a couple years ago about the mental health of security professionals, specifically with incident responders, right at the end of COVID. And I just like I don't think people realize how much these men and women are sacrificing to do IR around the globe. Like everyone on these teams has missed birthday parties and weddings and family events, and they've given up their weekends and nights to make sure that companies aren't burning to the ground if they're having an incident, right? So that we're not going to have supply chain issues. And I don't think that like people really realized kind of the heroic measures these response people are doing to like there's IRs happening all the time, right? And to make sure that like things aren't crumbling around, there's a lot of men and women out there really sacrificing their time to work around the clock.
So we've been fortunate enough to have two previous guests, one that delved into IR more than the other, but we had Chris Roberts and David Warshawski. And Chris Roberts literally pours his heart out all the
Hmm.
time about mental health, not just about
Yeah.
incident response, but in general. And we spoke about incident response with both those individuals, and is a stress beyond any comprehension when dealing with those threat actors and negotiating and trying to work with them and trying to help the organization to stop bleeding and hemorrhaging and losing intellectual property. So it's very important.
Oh yeah, well, I say it all the time. You know, it's like when you're, not consulting doing the IR, but when you're the person in the company, whatever, a defender, it's like when you're the CISO, the head guy, especially, it's like the sword of Damocles. I say over you. You know, the whole thing where
Hmm.
it's like the king says that's what it's like. There's this sword on a string, and you never know what it's going to break. That's what it's like, and I've experienced it when something happens, and I've seen like the moment and the look in someone's face. It's like they say you can see where the soul leaves the body. Where I remember someone saying once, "My life is over." Like because they got hit with something or
Right.
someone popped it or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, it's tough. And in those times, that's why most of us drink. So
What they call
speak.
that a segue in the business,
They
right?
call that a segue. Trying to get better at the segues. I got to figure out how to throw on the like and subscribe segue too better. Mine
Right.
is pretty ham fisted. But so what do we got here? It's guest choice as always. John called this particular cocktail.
Yeah, so this is my Sunday cocktail of choice when I watch football or whatever we're watching, but it's a bourbon and ginger. It's a drink
All
bourbon
right,
of your choice. I'm using Angel's Envy. I don't know what you guys have, but
that's good. I still got this bottle of a bootlegger I've talked about in the past.
yeah, I saw that on one of the previous episodes.
Yes, that some good friends gave to me who are absolutely fabulous guys. Last time they caught me saying like, I don't know who gave me this, and I, so I have to correct that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, it's a nice easy sip, right?
yeah, well, let's see. I've never had this before. I
Yeah.
got to be honest.
Cheers.
Oh, it was. I took a little because I've been drinking a little bit too much there.
Oh, this is dangerous, man. This is dangerous. That totally,
This is the first time you've ever had
totally.
bourbon and ginger before?
It
Oh,
is. Yes,
yeah.
that really cuts the bourbon. And whoa, wow. Okay, especially I can see on a hot day or something. Wow,
Hmm. Yeah,
that
if you
that is
mix
a
a
good
little
call.
lemonade
Wow.
in there in the summer, like
Hmm.
absolutely aces.
So
All
is this what
right.
we're serving at the bar when we open our bar?
Yeah.
You know what? If we open a bar, I guess we got to have like a special menu of like, stuff we've had on the show, like guest choice and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh
good
no, no, but
idea. I
you
kind
don't
of like
refer to
that.
the drink by the drink. You're like, oh, can I have an episode 2 on the rocks?
Yeah, that might get a little complicated. Hard to remember. I don't know, but whatever.
Well, why not complicate things?
All right. Well, why not complicate things? But it's good.
The world's complicated enough.
Yes.
But and speaking of complicated, I have to believe that incident response is probably one of the most complicated aspects of what people do in cyber because there's and correct me if I'm wrong. I've never been an IR person, but there's to go kits, then there's stuff that the client has to do in advance before you arrive, and then there's the forensics aspect of it. Once you, um, I guess, close the IR event, and then there's I guess during the IR there might be negotiations if it's ransomware. So it's a very dynamic situation.
Yeah, so the thing about incident response, especially modern incident response, what is so interesting about it is like probably one of the most um, human related technical professions you can have. Like as a
Mhm.
responder, I would say almost the majority of your actions is managing the people either on the client side or on the response team side is more than the technical aspect of it. Like you could give our secret sauce away, like our playbook, our IR playbooks, our IR technology, and give them to someone else, but you're not going to get the same level of response. And that's because it's about the people, right? The people know how to manage people. They're nerves of steel, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Well,
like it's such an interesting profession because you are dealing with the human aspect. And then with modern incident response, I would say it's what's so wild about it is that we have now transitioned into this new era of security where there are like the cyber and the kinetic line is so blurred,
Yeah,
especially with incident response, things like ransomware, right? Is that if something goes down, then we're not going to have toilet paper for 4 weeks. I mean, if you look at the kitty litter shortage or the Clorox shortage that's are happening right now, are all of the result of a cyber attack. And so there's real world implications that happen downstream of that in the physical world because of a digital action.
all right. So let me ask you then, John. Because we have talked a lot, especially with David and others, about the whole thing. It's like, hey, you got to be a little bit of a psychiatrist,
Hmm.
psychologist, whatever. Because one second you're reading like logs and disassembling code, and next second you're walking into a room with executives who are all like pooping their pants and everything. But the kinetic side of it is interesting. Have you really been seeing that lately? More in the engagements
Oh,
that you're
absolutely.
doing? Is that
Yeah, and
right?
that
You
that
are
started
really for
mostly over
real, huh?
yeah, that was a transition that happened like over the COVID lockdown
Oh, okay.
where there's if you think about the threat landscape by and large, let's if we focus on the cybercrime aspect because that's something that applies to everyone.
Mhm.
The threat landscape by and large is distilled down to an extortion based attack, either from causing a business disruption or by a disruption of your brand reputation by stealing data. And what ransomware highlighted is how much pressure you can create by taking a system offline. Like and then you like, in what we've seen, we do this thing every year called the Threat Intelligence Index, which is basically our year in review. And since the ransomware boom, manufacturing took first place as the most impacted industry. And my entire career prior to this, it's always been finance, right? Because finance had the
Yeah,
money.
that's where the money is. That's
That's where the
right.
money
Yeah.
is. What ransomware has highlighted is that finance may have the money, but manufacturing has the pressure. Because there's not a line manager on earth who doesn't know down to the second how much money that they're going to lose for as soon as that line stops, that
Oh,
production
right. And
line
with the
stops.
whole supply chain and the just-in-time stuff,
And
I don't
we
know
are,
much about
yeah,
manufacturing, but I
we and we
know
learned that over
that.
COVID is that we are operating on these tiny, tiny supply chain margins where we have become so logistically advanced that it's like as soon as something comes off the shelf in Austin, then another one is built in Milwaukee, and then it's all shipping crazy. And if you mess with that just a little bit, then you have a 6 month sort of delay on everything that goes on.
If I remember correctly, that's kind of called, I think, just-in-time manufacturing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'll take it to the gloom and doom thing. So when we, so it's funny. I've been having a conversation with my wife. I'm looking to go for a doctorate, and we were talking about with some
No
other
big
people
deal.
recently about the whole idea behind cyber conflict and global unrest, and how either kinetic war will not go away but get replaced by cyber attacks, and then the real life scenarios of somebody hitting a SCADA and then taking that SCADA down maybe for a power plant, and then that power plant goes offline for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then from the 3 or 4 weeks when the power plant goes down, then we start getting a little bit of famine because of the food is spoiling, and the food is spoiling. Then we go into sanitation. Then when we go into sanitation issues, we go into health issues. People start getting sick. People can't get medicine. Medicine can't be manufactured. Medicine can't be delivered. There's no more heating or cooling or oxygen being done by machines providing oxygen to people from room. So it goes into a real life situation that if we ever get to that next step, not so much cybercrime, but uh, war that takes place purely in cyber attacks than necessarily kinetic, we have real life issues. So while IR is um, I there is that issue of manufacturing and losing, you know, stuff in the supply chain. It's even worse when people start getting affected 100% by it. And then the only other thing I wanted to add to was never been an IR responder, but I've been an EMT. And as an EMT that responds to people, and you have to tell people that the person is dead, unfortunately has passed on, or or you have to tell somebody that they're experiencing a heart attack, we have to rush them to the hospital. You can see the grief in the face. Now, while I understand IR in cyber is a little bit different, you know somebody's saying, "Wow, if we don't recover, we're not making payroll for 10,000 people or something like that." That's
Hmm.
got to be a real world life impact, and not only on the organization experiencing the incident, but people like you who have to say, "Oh my God, if I don't take care of this, there's a real life situation where this company might go out of business, and tens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of families are going to experience issues paying bills."
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of things there is the from a conflict point of view, we have kind of transitioned into that area where cyber warfare interacts with traditional warfare, and we saw that with Russia invasion of Ukraine prior to and then during the invasion. Like there was all with the kinetic sort of attack, there was also the cyber attacks with all the wiper malware that went out, and I'm pretty sure with the what's going on with in Israel prior to the first physical sort of action, there was cyber attacks that led up into that. So now they are truly is going hand in hand, and that is because of this like our society is so intertwined with the digital world as you can carry out what historically would have to do as a physical op through digital means. Your second point though, extraordinarily accurate. I've unfortunate whenever ransomware was like 2017 2018 when we were first the boom, like it was I can remember the incident where it happened. Like I remember, I'll never forget it. I'll remember when I was like, what is this? What is this? Like prior to ransomware had been around, but like usually it was like spread through, drive-by downloads, or before that it
Mhm.
was the Eternal Blue kind of just sprayed and prayed out there. And we saw the modern hands-on keyboard ransomware attack. I was like, what the heck is going on here? And then after that, it was like a major incident every 3 days for 2 years. And through that time, before we could kind of get our arms around it, we've unfortunately been on those phone calls where you have companies who are like, I can't do business. Like all of my systems are encrypted, my backups are encrypted, my backups of my backups are encrypted. Like I am completely dead in the water. And like that, what do you say to someone like that who's like they're asking you for help, but like there's literally nothing you can do because everything is encrypted. It's not like in the olden days, the ransom was kind of crappy and you may be able to decrypt it. Um, but then they, kind of button things up, and it was like, there's no way. Like, what do you say to someone like that? So yeah, it's still probably not to the level of an EMT, but it's the stress is there, certainly is there.
I would beg to say, even though I'm talking about lives, the level and complexity and the emotions are probably the same. While it might be one person or a multiple casualty incident, I might be dealing with 3 or 4 people. And let me be upfront, I haven't done EMS as a practitioner in a long time, even though I'm still an EMT. But dealing with some pretty traumatic things in life as an EMT, that's bad. But knowing that a hospital has had their whole entire file system encrypted and people's medical records are there,
Yeah,
and somebody might be in the middle of an operation, and that robotic machine that's being operated by somebody 6 countries away, which I've heard that's happened before. um, it's got to be extremely stressful. It's got to
yeah.
be.
Oh yeah.
Hospitals are
Well,
like a big target now too. In this.
yeah, we were talking to someone earlier. They used to be off limits, but not anymore. They're going
It
for
was very
anything. It's
interesting to
really
see how there
twisted,
used to be that honor amongst thieves kind of thing where they
Yeah,
said we
yeah.
won't attack schools or hospitals until the revenues
That's
started going
that's
down, and
right.
then suddenly we're like, well, yeah, well, of course
Yeah,
we're
we
going
need
to
more
attack.
money. Yeah.
Yeah,
The cannabis manufacturers now. I haven't heard anything about that.
I haven't heard anything about that either.
Yeah.
So speaking of things we may have heard about, the IR is there. It keeps evolving. Ransomware is definitely upped it. Used to be a lot more relaxing before ransomware, but
Hmm.
so talking about AI, we did something maybe, God, it's over 6 months ago now. Now it's been just over a year since the whole chat GPT generative AI thing came out. Um, what kind of things are you seeing there? And kind of in particular, are you seeing any of that leaking? There's all this horror and people are still trying to figure out what it all means. But have you seen anything leaking into incidents or getting into incidents involving it? Now, we've heard that they're using it. The bad guys are using it to help, like for spam and stuff, and to make themselves more productive. But I don't know. What are you saying?
Yeah, so such an interesting question, and what I always go back to is like, how would we know? Like, how would you know unless you were like sitting next to them while they were doing it, or you had access to their infrastructure and you're actually watching them?
Knowing what tools they're using, you
Yeah,
mean?
like
That's how.
how are
That's how
you
you know.
really gonna know? And instead of that, I would say that the way that I've been approaching this is to say, let's just maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But what really matters is, are their goals and objectives changing as a result of them using some new technology? We haven't seen any evidence that their goals and objectives are changing, right? So still from a cyber crime point of view, goals and objectives remain the same. Their objectives are
For
to
money.
encrypt systems, steal data, extort you for cryptocurrency. Now, let's say they're using AI and large language models for phishing. Now, does that change our security strategy significantly? No, because a fish is still a fish. Someone has to click. And we may not do an awesome job of that collectively worldwide, but we still know what we're supposed to be doing. So then the question is of scale. okay, so now what this is we're going to have more incidents because they're going to be able to operationalize generative AI to take over some functions that used to be due like humans, just like we would use it for the legitimate side. Like we want to
Hmm.
become more efficient. We're going to offload some things to humans. From phishing, it's like we're already in the age of scale. If you zoom out a bit, the last 20
Right.
years, how many phishing has been, we're like almost going straight up for how many different, how much fish email is sent out there.
Yeah, could we
So,
possibly get any more? And just so you know, a lot of people who are not in security may not realize it listening. Like you may not know it, but what's it up to? It's in the high 90s. The percentage of email that's spam.
oh yeah, I'm sure.
Most of the email you get is that sent you is actually filtered out long before you ever get it. It's so you're right. The idea of getting more is kind of doesn't make any sense. At least from a practical perspective, it doesn't matter
When people ask me that all the time, like, what are we seeing? How are we seeing criminals use AI? We have not seen any definitive evidence that they are, but
really.
they
Okay.
probably are. We ran this experiment on to see like how good a large language model was at writing phishing emails compared to our professional social engineers. Pretty good. It's pretty good. Like they're not better than humans, but it's pretty close. So why wouldn't they be doing that? I don't know. But let's just say let's assume they are. What That's a good assumption to make. How does that change what we're doing on a day-to-day basis? Or from a strategy point of view, from security, it doesn't. Like we still everything still remains the same in terms of like how will we detect and respond and prevent that? It doesn't change even if Terminator's writing phishing emails.
You know what it makes me think? Just quick, like, gee, that when you mentioned that you have your social engineers try it, I'm like, gee, with an LLM, are they able to like lay off some of their social engineers who
Oh,
is
I'm
it
sure there's
affecting their
social
jobs?
engineers out there that are like professional phishing writers. Yeah, I'm sure.
Now they can shrink that staff, but sorry.
So I got one thing to touch on with AI, which without a doubt people are using AI and it's known, but it's not traditional, and that's when people send a message to somebody saying my daughter's been kidnapped, and they use that voice, and they
Hmm.
and then they find out their daughter's been home, and they like it's like, oh my god, it's so scary. There's parts of the voice that only my daughter's been known to do, or the screams or the screeches, and then there's the other part with the AI. And I know nothing about this, so I'm probably touching upon something that I'm not good at. But AI created photos and doctored stuff. I mean, I know it's been used in certain wars for people doing certain things, but people know without a doubt that's been um, created via AI. When people go back and research it, they might not know immediately, but they might know historically.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say, yes, I would agree. I think that we are, especially in 2024, think about 2024, we have, for the first time ever, we have a major US election. We have major elections in the European Union. We have the Paris Olympics, the UEFA Championships, and then two ongoing major conflicts in the world. Along with that, we also have ubiquitous access to generative AI. For the first time ever, we're going to experience this as a thing, and it is very possible to create increasingly convincing deepfakes of text, image, audio, video. So there's this great quote, and I can't remember the book where I read it, but it was basically says that for the first time, your reality is not based on your experiences; it's based on what you pay attention to. And so you can live in the same physical world as someone and have a completely different reality from them. And I think we all kind of experienced that over COVID from a large part. Like, there's a lot of people that were living in the same house that had two different realities of what is going on. And what's scary to me is generative AI is going to be able to take that up a notch because you're going to be able to create this digital reality of video, audio, text, image to push a narrative across the board. So that's actually a great segue, Adam. So I was going to say, like, what are you seeing from AI? And when people ask me, are they using it for phishing? Are they using it to write malware? Was that and I would say, are we asking the right question? Because if they're using it to write malware, if they're using it to do phishing, if they're using it to bypass security, that doesn't change cybersecurity for us. We don't have to like that. Our strategy remains the same. Yeah, they bypass. We already deal with bypasses. We already deal with phishing. We already deal with all this stuff. But if they use these advanced technologies to create an attack that we aren't considering yet, that's really scary. Because if they're able to use these advanced technologies to do something we don't have a strategy for example, I, as a criminal, let's say for I was incredibly smart AI person and I come up with an incredibly charming AI model. My AI model is so charming that I can get your AI model to do things on behalf of me. Just like you would be social engineered as a person,
Wow.
I could be social my model could social engineer your model to say
I wonder if that's already here. To be honest, we're
it
very
could be.
close.
Now that's the questions we really need to be asking is like how we tracking things from an adversary point of view is we need to see whenever they're shifting their behaviors to a place that we don't have not considered yet.
That's really interesting because I haven't thought about it in those terms. We've been so terrified, but yeah, there is an element of okay, a lot of these things that will just make them they'll be able to do what they've been doing faster, cheaper, maybe at
Sure,
greater
the
scale.
barrier
If
of
the
entry
scale
gets
even
lowered, all that
matters,
kind of
right?
stuff.
Yeah, but the idea of them coming up with totally new things that we don't know how to deal with,
Hmm.
that's interesting.
Well,
Wow.
they've already said, so this is not exactly what John is saying, but kind of sort of,
Mhm.
that AI models have been manipulated to have cultured biases and prejudice.
Well,
So
yeah, the
it's
thing
not
about that
exactly the
is
same. Yeah.
you need so much data to train these models, right? And so they use the internet. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but the internet is full of bias. So when you train
Don't say
something,
that. That's not
yeah, when
true.
when you train something,
it's full of bias and flat out
live,
bullshit. I mean,
right,
that's a
exactly. So you're training these
big
models
portion.
on stuff that by default has bias or is full of lies or all this kind of thing. It's crap in, crap out at the end of the day. So it's when you're thinking about how AI is going to evolve in the future, like curating proper data sets and making sure that your data is explainable and secure and everything like that is going to be paramount to the success of it. But we have models out there right now that are training on data that we know is biased, and then it's going to end up being biased at the end. And you can turbocharge that by knowing how to manipulate an AI model down the
Or how to
road.
normalize it too. Yeah. So if you keep on producing, normalized data for something else, and not that AI model learns that bias, and in itself, it's not biased. It's only going based on what it's been provided. It's kind of a
And how
weird
would
way.
you know?
Yeah.
How would you know? Like, oh, how do I know that the answer I got from ChatGPT is biased, right? Because I just go in there and ask it the question. Oh, it told me it's got to be accurate, right? And because it's ChatGPT, because I can't explain how it's going to come to me and get that answer, like how the whole algorithm works. So that's the thing that when I think about generative AI going in the future is like how do we get our like pull the reins back a bit to say, okay, before we really start to use this in enterprises, how do we do things like explainability and reliance and making sure that we can detect when biases are shifting out of the norms? um, I'm not a data scientist, so I don't know the questions to that. I just know that we we should be using this technology, we definitely should, but we need to be able to know whenever you give it an input, what could you expect the output to be? Because otherwise, what it reminds me of is like uh, back in the day, well, when people would just Google something, you see the headline that you like, and then you say, well, boom, this is my proof that
Of course.
my opinion is correct. I don't read the article; I just get the headline that I
Yeah.
want without reading the actual content. And I was like, this is times a billion, right? Because I can ask my model, oh, tell me, such and such, and if it agrees with me, I'm like, oh, there you go, it's fact, fact.
Well, I've been taken some time to really study AI, but just besides just reading it and doing some prompt engineering.
Hmm.
And I suggest everyone try it, dip into it, like take a real course or look into it, because you start to realize that it really is reacting to you. What you ask it has so much of an impact on what it's based on. And yes, it's based on everything that it knows,
or how
everything it's
you
been
ask
trained
it.
on. It's just right. How you
Hmm.
ask it and what you ask it has a huge, huge impact. And and if you do a little experiment, try asking the same question or more or less the same question a couple different ways. You can, unless it's something really trivial. Well, actually, it's interesting. If he has something trivial, then it'll always spit out the same answer because the evidence is so overwhelming statistically that this is the answer. But if you ask it something that's not so clear cut, and just ask it a few different ways, you will get radically different answers, and it really is reacting to you to a certain extent.
So this goes back to how governments get manipulated for elections, and I don't want to get into the politics of it. I'm just talking about in general. People, nation states produce data, put articles out there, do things. Eventually, that data becomes normalized because so many people have listened to it and read it and resent it and republished it, and that becomes normalized. So if I started publishing things that says the sky is green, and then four other, I don't know, broadcasting companies or journalists wrote stories, and then other people researched it, eventually it becomes normalized, and you can work together to crowdsource and change a reality, at least in my mind.
No, that I agree. That scares me a lot. It scared me so much that I like stopped in 2016. I stopped consuming all news. Like I don't watch or
Really?
read the news anymore because you know why, guys? Because I would read the news and I would find myself getting physically upset, and I was like, why? Like I'm gonna start the day just like angry because of something that I read online that I'm probably not gonna do anything about. So like, why am I doing that to myself? So then I just unplugged. Like I got off of Facebook and then I stopped reading the news. And I was like such like a happier person. And I was like, if I just focus on like what's immediately around me, the stuff that I can control, then I'll be happier. Because like Adam, to your point, it's like that you can be manipulated so easily by content online.
So, and here's a similar thing, right? Many years ago, and I'm sure you want to hear my medical history, I had kidney stones. But when I didn't know what kidney
I don't
stones
want to
were,
hear about that
I
part
don't
of it.
care. So,
Again, by the way, I've heard about this enough times.
no,
I'm
no.
But
interested to see how kidney stones he's going to tie this together with media
So
manipulation.
when you
okay.
start researching, I didn't know what kidney stones were. I never had kidney stones many years ago. I started researching the symptoms. I became a web doctor, and I found out I had kidney failure, but I didn't.
Oh, you mean like you had
So when you
yourself
start
convinced? Yeah.
researching and you start looking into things, and a lot of people have that issue, they use Google to diagnose. Some people have had very positive results where they found out something that 10 doctors told them they didn't have and they were able to find it out. But the average person, when they start researching something, and I'm talking about serious things, I'm not talking about not serious things. Like you could research how to make a banana cake. I made that up, right? And find 10 different ways to do it. It's not going to really impact your life. It might impact your cuisine, but when you start finding out, like, oh, I have these symptoms, and then your mind goes astray. You start saying, I have a horrible disease or I have a horrible medical issue. And that's the same thing that would happen with AI, I bet you. Like if you start going into ChatGPT, I've never done this, and start trying to diagnose something, ChatGPT might tell you something that you don't want to hear, but it's not true. So my point I'm making
Mhm.
is you got to be careful how you um, solicit information or ask for help.
Yeah. Well, what I found with it and using ChatGPT, I mean, I happen to use ChatGPT, um, is it is kind of similar to the way you use Google or the other
Hmm.
search engines. And I think, Adam, you said the right thing. It's like you go to research it. You're doing research. It's going to help you find information that will help you figure stuff out. But you need to look at it with the critical eye, realize it may not be correct. Hopefully, actively look for the differences in of opinion, and that's a really good thing to do with the generative AI too. Is to ask it what are the prevalent schools of thought on this. You can even ask it what are some of the outliers. If you just ask it a general question, it won't tell you generally, but you can kind of ask it to give the broader view, and realize you're doing research. Unless it's something trivial, it's not a good idea to just go to it and ask for this and say, "What's the answer?"
Yeah.
Especially if it's something that's a
But
little
plenty of
deep.
people do.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah,
Yeah, it's responsible use of it, Joe. I think you were trying to get to the point. Is like, it is a great technology. If and why it's so important that everyone should understand just you don't have to be an expert, but just a little bit about how it works, so that you can properly consume the output, because it's going to be a great technology, and everyone should be using it, but using it in the right way, which is to say, oh, I understand that there are things like bias and conflicts, and you can make these things hallucinate or all reality. So I need to take this information and then verify it afterwards. But yeah, it's great. And I think from a positive, I mean, everyone talks doom and gloom about AI all the time. A little bit of a positive spin
it's fun, but
on
yeah.
us from a security, to say like we are getting better at security. Everyone always says we're getting worse at it. I think we're actually getting better at it. Because the thing is before no one ever cared. We're just getting better. We're getting better at security by people caring. There's more people that care about security than ever before. And if you think about whenever e-commerce launched in the 90s, were there congressional hearings about that technology before we let people do financial transactions with it? No, it's you just yeet it out there, and then it was like, oh crap, we need to. There's a threat here. There's risk, so we need to start regulating it. For the first time in my life, there is a disruptive technology out there in which governments and companies are coming together to develop some sort of governance or policies around it before it becomes ingrained in our society. And I think that that's like a real good indicator that as a people, we are becoming more secure conscious.
Well, that is kind of a double-edged sword because, and I had one of the things down here in the notes. They passed that act in Europe, and the Biden administration put out some. I think he put out an executive order about how the government's got to look into AI and all this stuff. And on the one hand, yeah, that's great that they're actually being proactive and everything. On the other hand, who was it, Reagan, who said the scariest words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." I just hope they don't make an ungodly mess out of the whole thing or get hijacked, because also, one of the other things are that a lot of the, corporations that say they welcome, legislation and regulation are, well, the ones who have all the lobbyists who want to
So
write the laws
Yeah.
themselves. So we got to watch out for that
keep
too.
in mind also AI is that it's just not. I mean, I know we know this, but I'm saying it for our audience. AI is just not on a computer. It's on a lot of IoT devices, whether it can tell you differentiate maybe from a camera for gender, or whether it can use it to identify, you know, uh, animals and stock when hurting them, and it's used for a lot of different IoT devices. And it's not, and when you're using it more for quicker analysis, it's not so bad, right? Because you're not making determinations where people's lives are on the line. You're able to use it to analyze large data sets in shorter, quicker periods of time.
Yeah, that's the real difference. I think that that's going to be the real difference maker from a security point of view, is that especially with large language models, the thing that they are exceedingly good at is data summarization and data distillation. Because for 20 something years we've been talking about things like alert fatigue, and there's too much data, there's too much noise, our analysts can't keep up, we can't hire enough SOC people to triage all this stuff, and we finally have a technology that is going to say, oh well, I can go through a billion alerts a day and tell you the story behind them. And they like this is like we're at a tipping point in security where, you know, for mostly, especially with I think people like ransomware, like the successes they hide in the noise for the most part. We did this study about in 2021, and it was like how fast does a ransomware attack happen from beginning to end, from the moment they go hands on keyboard to the time ransomware is deployed? How in time, in days, hours, or whatever, how fast does that take compared to 2018, 2019? And it got incredibly faster, and then it got down to a little over 4 days in 2021, and then the newest thing, hey, quick plug, in the 2024 Threat Intelligence Index, you'll get the updated stats, but it's like 3.8 days. What was really interesting as a side data point in that analysis is that year over year, our analysts, our the responders, were finding more evidence of the attackers in existing security tools prior to the ransomware being
Oh
deployed.
wow.
So what we can
Hmm.
take from that is that people were buying stuff. That stuff was generally working. It was waving its arms, ringing alarm bells, but we were missing that detection and response piece, largely probably because that was one alert in a series of 500,000 alerts that got kicked off that day. So what we can look from a technology point of view is this game changer, which is these large language models, which are phenomenally good at taking disparate data sets and saying, give me the TLDR of that.
Yeah.
You could do it with documents all the
Yeah.
time.
That's really interesting, John, because I'll tell you, that just clicked in my head. I hadn't thought about this at all. One of the things that I've done in the past occasionally, I've been running a security group, was we do a compromise assessment.
Hmm.
And for everyone, compromise assessment is basically when you bring in some consultants and they go through everything that you have. They take the place apart. They look at all your logs and they try to see, is there something you missed? Because the break-ins, we say they're stealthy and all this stuff, but it's not magic. If someone's in there, there is some indication somewhere that they were there of what they did. And it was always the most terrifying thing imaginable to me, because I'm like, shit, if I find out, like, we missed something a year ago and someone's been in, I'm going to have some explaining to do. But yeah, automating that with AI and being able to do that so much more quickly, so much more often, it's
Joe,
like
I had no idea you were in the
unbelievable.
compromise assessment game. That was the first thing I did at IBM was build out the compromise assessment service.
Well, I can tell you, I'm sure it's a lot more fun to perform the compromise assessment than to buy the compromise assessment and have it done
Yeah,
to you. You know?
but there's a great story in that, is that if you look at when you do a compromise assessment, one of the major things you do is that you do an audit of persistence mechanisms. For the listeners out there who don't know what I mean by that, is that, generally attackers and malware, whenever they get access to a system, they want to keep access to that system in case it reboots. So they would want to persist, quote unquote, on there using various techniques. This the number one persistence technique for, I don't even know, 15 years now, has been scheduled tasks.
Okay.
Scheduled
Yeah.
tasks. And you can find very fancy malware that definitely costs a lot of money for someone to write and then deploy, persist as a scheduled task. And if you just have the ability to collect and enumerate all scheduled tasks in your environment, there's a good chance that you're going to find how someone is made. And so it doesn't matter, like they wrote this fancy malware, it bypasses all their things and it does everything, it's blind everything, but it persists as a scheduled task. That scheduled task would be anomalous in your environment and you can identify it.
Yeah, I think we just figured out a product here. If you could just go, because you could take all those logs, say, with your tools, collect all the schedules, tasks, and even if you don't know what you're looking for, you could ask the LLM, anything look dodgy here?
That
You
was my
know?
segue. I was actually going to ask you. So, what do you think, John, about the future of SIM, or security information event management, for those who don't know what that is, and XDR as it relates to AI? Because everything is related to now with SIMs. They have these AI models and AI, apps that you can run, and XDR is that next step level of having those advanced. Um, I think it's better if you, even if you explain. You'll probably do a better job.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, there's always going to be these tools with data set. I don't think that we're going to get rid of SIMs or XDRs or any of these tools. What I imagine the future is going to be is that there will be an AI platform that sits over top of that, in which you be able to, it will collect and process data from that and present an analyst with a contextual awareness of a data point to say, oh, I got this alert. Um, and then I went out because I saw that it was associated with a Windows machine. I collected the Windows event logs from the XDR data lake, and then I checked to see if there was any alerts in the SIM. Okay, and then I saw that it was sort of related to a new scheduled task being created. So then I went to the endpoint and I grabbed a copy of the binary that it was associated with it, and this is what I found. You tell me what to do. I think that that's going to be the future of security, where you're using AI to tie together all of these tools that have different data in the context in which that data exists is important for different things. But I don't think it's going to like eliminate any of the things. I really see it being an overarching platform that's going to be able to pivot through different data points and present the There's still nothing better than the human brain in making an informed decision or identifying patterns. Like we're not there from an AI point of view. So like we're going to maximize our humans by saying, you know what computers are really good at? Collecting and processing big chunks of data and distilling it down into a story. And you know what humans are really good at is making the decision based on a story. And so like we're just going to reassess and redistribute workloads to the right locations going forward, I think.
Wow, John, I think you've just done the impossible, which is you've made my old cynical self somewhat hopeful about the future of security, because it's a thing in security where everyone, like every other product, something new comes out and they say, "Oh, we're building this in, we're building this in," and now it's like everything, all the security vendors are saying now with AI, now with AI. But you know what? In this case, it could actually be helpful,
It could
maybe
be.
even a game changer in a lot of ways.
So I got it
You
right.
know,
We just copyrighted it 2 seconds ago. It's AIDR instead of MDR, XDR. It's AIDR.
AIDR. All
Yeah.
right,
The
let's
I
get it.
mean AI is going to be the what we're waiting for listeners if you're not in this is like AI and machine learning are baked into a lot of different disparate tools already. Even LLMs, they're in there, right? But they're all individually baked into little pockets of technology. The weird thing about security, Joe, and as if you ever bought security technology before in your career, which I'm sure you have, is that
Yeah.
security is the only industry in which integration costs are pushed to the consumer. So like there'll be like a startup that comes up that solves this really niche security problem, and then they'll become and they'll sell you it, and then you end up with 75 different tools that are now your security stack, and then you go to your engineers and you're like, okay, make all these talk to each other, and then try to get these in that quote unquote single pane of glass that we've been chasing for 25 years. And
That has improved a tiny little bit in the past few years, but you're right. Largely, in fact, I've even had people say, they say they're a sim company or they're a logging company. They're not. They're consulting. They make a lot of money off consulting, doing exactly
yeah,
what you say.
yeah,
Yeah,
the product will solve world hunger if you buy enough professional services. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Wait. You saying that's not true? I bought that product last week.
It could be. It could be. I've
there you
never
go.
been a consumer. I've never bought. That's the one thing in my career that I have not done is I've never been a someone who's like, "Oh, I'm going to decide what we're going to invest in." I've either been an engineer that's been charged with integrating it after the fact or making them work as well as they would be. But I have no experience in like dealing with vendors to say, I have to balance all these kind of different relationships and like, okay, well, I just bought this thing and like it's going to cost so much money to rip and replace it. So like I might as well renew even though I know it's got these sort of limitations, but I only have so much leash on my security chain here and like if I mess up, that's so tangent time. I was having conversations over the last couple of years as my role has kind of changed, and I talked to way more CISOs than I ever did before. And one of the things that I'm starting to sympathize with the CISO is that they're constantly playing this like high stakes game a seesaw where they're trying to balance making the organization as secure as possible without messing anything up. And every time they mess something up, even if they're trying to do the right thing, then they have to take something away from security going forward. Because it's like every time you mess up, then they're going to blame security, and then you're going to lose that political capital to do something in the future. But if something bad does happen, then they get all the blame. So it's a very difficult job that I don't think I properly appreciated that job in its fullest until I started meeting more CISOs and talking like what are they dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Joe has had the unique pleasure of, when I worked for Joe, of having me vet vendors to see whether or not the product was possibly the right product for us. Needless to say, I think some vendors do not like me.
No, but you're right, and you know, Adam, we've had many very interesting conversations. John, you hit it right on the head. Why what CISOs have to do and why they have that dead look in their eyes often. You know, I have someone like Adam. I can't tell you how many times we look at a product, we'd evaluate it, we POC, and they go, "What do you think?" I go, "It's wonderful, it's great, it's fantastic." And they go, "Do you want to buy it?" And I'm like, "No," because besides the fact that it's a big investment to deploy it and all that, if I'm going to invest my resources in that, it's a trade off. That means I can't do something else. That means I need to either, well, I need to not do something else that I'm doing now. I need to give up, or I need to, not have another thing that I'm planning. And even if I say I'm going to go get more money for this, well, maybe I was going to go get more money for something else. What's the best mix for me? That's the
Yeah.
really tough part.
And
But
conversely, when we've told
completely.
vendors that when they're like, "Oh, isn't my product the best thing since sliced bread?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay. No, 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 no. Tell me." And you sit there like, "Your product can't do this, can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, can't do this, can't do that," and they're like, they're mortified because they've actually found out that it's true, and they didn't realize what they were selling was not really capable of doing what they expected. And I don't like ripping products apart because we've found some really tremendously good products out there that really did what they said. But no one it's like no one wants to hear the real truth sometimes.
Yeah, and you're putting yourself on the line. I say, look, especially with something expensive, would be like, look, if you say you want me to sign for this or talk my boss into signing for it, if it's really big, it's like, that's my credibility. I got to know this is going to work. And
Mm-hmm.
not only work, that it's the right thing for us. Um, but anyway, so on that happy note, I think we're kind of headed towards last call here. But we're getting to the end. I know I'm out, and I might have to have another one of these. I'm really liking
Yeah,
this. I gotta say,
these are excellent. Dangerously good though.
yes,
It's a very subtle.
dangerously
Yeah.
good. That's right. You got that right. So
Well, I mean, since we're on last call and we were talking about football and other sports, I think AI should replace all the coaches that run these teams and see how it goes for them.
Oh, you know what, dude? I've always thought it would be so interesting to like if I don't know if you guys follow like the English Premier League, like English soccer at all, and they have like the divisions as you go
Yeah,
up through, like up into
yeah,
Premier Championship.
yeah.
But like I always thought it would be so interesting if you took like someone who was really good at Madden and they as they go through, they get to control like real people. Like the tippy top of that would be like, yes, you are now you're so good at Madden. Now we're going to give you a chance to call plays for a real life team to see how well you could do against a
Wow, that's interesting. That
yeah.
could
That'd
actually
be
become a
that'd be
video game.
awesome.
It's almost like a sim.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
And we spoke because my son plays soccer, and we spoke about you
Mhm.
played soccer, so
Yep.
it's very interesting. I don't follow soccer well, but that would be interesting. You become knowledgeable about how a player is because you actually live the player. You get almost immersed into that player and what they do and how they think. And then instead of being the player, now you're running the team. That would be a unique experience.
Oh yeah.
Now that I think about it, I think there was a movie about that. There was like a movie where they were like, it was like Call of Duty in real life. Like
Oh, was it?
you controlled like a real
Uh,
person while they,
Yeah. Gamer, was that it?
yeah, it was
Yeah,
it
you got to
Gerard
control
Butler?
someone. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
now I
But
got to go
yeah,
watch that.
Yeah, and like the guy, I think it happens. Like I think the guy like doesn't take the instructions or something. He goes, "Why don't you listen to me?" It's like because I was going to die if I
yeah.
did that. Some crazy stuff like that. All right. Well, fortunately, we're not quite at that level yet, at least. But the AIs are not completely taking over. But you know, we just got to learn to use them right.
Oh,
Keep
so
the
wait,
leash
I
on
get it.
them and
You take the
ourselves.
CISO, you immerse them in an IR team, and then you have the CISO call the place.
Yeah, yeah, the
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah.
I think the future of these augmented realities that we're able to do right now in terms of security to gamify cybersecurity to get better is there's a real future in that to take the tabletop to the cyber range to the next level to make it even more immersive in which you are really in a network that is being compromised by whatever and you make a game out of it so that you can practice doing incident response internally like every single day.
So
So
there
you
was a
can,
movie about that
Oh.
in the '80s. It was called War Games. Think about
Oh
that.
God.
yeah,
I know it
Well, I can
sounds.
tell you,
Yeah.
having done a bunch of tabletops, I mean, they are basically gamification. The way to make it real and the way to make it seriously is something like, bet your bonus on it or something. You got to make it real for people.
some
That's
stakes.
No, but imagine
that's
being
it.
able to
Give
immerse
it some
somebody.
stakes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Imagine being able to
That'll immerse them.
immerse somebody really
Yeah.
into a tabletop exercise. And when they make mistakes, there's real life reality consequences. Like you see
yeah.
your whole network go up, you lose all your money. Imagine a game like that.
You know what? Not to plug too much, but we do have cyber ranges here in IBM where we do
Yes,
that.
it's in
Yeah,
Boston, right?
Really? Okay.
yeah. There's a couple of them
No,
now.
plugs at the end of the show are cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go right ahead. Anything else?
Yes, we're launching. Yeah, there's going to be one in DC. There's one in Boston. There's one in Ottawa, and one in Bangalore. But yeah, that's the
Wow.
idea.
Cool.
Is that
We're probably not going to make the one in India, but
I always wanted
whatever.
to visit the one in Boston. I didn't get a chance.
it's awesome. It really is awesome. Like we have a fake news studio there, which
Yeah,
is my favorite part,
Oh, really?
I
where
saw the
you like
video.
you take the
Well, that's Mission
CEO,
Impossible.
you
Wow,
take the
that's
CEO of
cool.
the company and you put them in the hot seat, and they have to answer questions from a news reporter about like
Yeah.
what their decisions, how they handled the incident, and as they make a decision, you see the stock price go down or up, and you can see social media start trashing the company if like they answer it incorrectly. They try to make it as real as possible.
Oh, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah,
That's
it's very
intense.
cool.
That is very cool.
It's a
Wow,
great way
I'm
to
gonna have to
get
look into
people
that.
outside of the security teams to realize how involved they are in the incident
Mhm.
response and the shared responsibility of security.
I like that. All right, well, I'm gonna have to check that out. That's got to be fun. The security team must really like seeing their CEO like
Hmm.
seriously sweat. I hope they share that around so
Yeah,
I can see it.
it's a fun event, but yeah, it's really impactful. Most people leave like exhausted, and they're like, I
Yeah,
didn't realize that it was going to be like this, and that's exactly kind of that impact that we want to
It's
have.
very intense from what I remember.
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, very cool. All right, well, we learned a lot of interesting stuff. So, hey, John, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah,
This was
thank
a
you for
lot of
having
fun.
me.
This is a very cool discussion.
Yeah, we
Thank you for
really
having me.
appreciate you coming on. We really do.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
And oh God, I forgot our plugs. I'm putting it at the end. Remember, please like, subscribe, follow, tell your friends, spread the word, and
And send
relax and have a
feedback.
cocktail. Yes, and send feedback, even though we don't encourage drinking, even though we kind of do, but whatever. All right.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks a lot, everyone.
All right, bye bye.